Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal when the news of Tristan Rogers' cancer diagnosis swept through the General Hospital fanbase, it struck with the force of a tidal wave, sudden, merciless, and deeply unsettling. For over 4 decades, Tristan had been the face, the voice, and the heart of Robert Scorpio, a character so etched into the DNA of the show that even the thought of his absence felt like erasing a foundational stone of Port Charles itself. This was not just another character's exit. This was not just another actor's illness. This was the unraveling of a legacy, a slow and painful confrontation with mortality, both of a man and of a symbol millions had come to love. Despite receiving a devastating diagnosis, Tristan chose to press forward with an unshakable sense of duty and professional grace. He returned to set, filmed what may now be recognized as his final episodes, and did so with the quiet dignity that had defined his presence since the 1980s. There was no spectacle. No public breakdown. Just an aging warrior slipping into his armor one more time to deliver lines that carried more weight than viewers may have realized at the time. Yet the toll was undeniable. The effort, noble as it was, exhausted him physically and emotionally, and not long after he left the set, he slipped into a deep and unresponsive coma. The deterioration was swift, brutal, and frightening, and it plunged his loved ones into a state of helpless grief. Now, as he lies in a sterile hospital room, hooked up to machines that beep at regular intervals, the only affirmation that his heart still beats, a quiet and solemn vigil has formed. Family, lifelong friends, castmates, directors, and crew, many of whom have worked with Tristan through decades of triumph and turmoil, have taken turns sitting beside his bed, holding his hand, whispering stories from the old days, praying for a miracle they know may never come. His once vibrant frame now appears fragile and faded, the fiery vitality that once animated Robert's fierce confrontations and tender farewells replaced with a haunting stillness. Tears are shed not only for the man fighting for his life but for the quiet passing of an era. Outside the hospital, the response has been equally overwhelming. Fans have flooded social media with tributes, photos, and videos capturing Tristan's most iconic performances, moments when Robert Scorpio took down the bad guys with a smile, reunited with Holly in emotionally charged embraces, or stood silently in the rain after saying goodbye to Robin. These images now take on a new weight, as fans cling to them like lifeboats in the face of the unimaginable. Messages pour in by the thousands, with hashtags like #FightForTristan and #RobertForever trending worldwide. One fan wrote that Robert can't leave now, Holly still needs him, Daisy deserves to know him, and General Hospital will never be the same without his moral compass. Even fans who've long stopped watching the show have returned to offer condolences, realizing just how integral Tristan Rogers was not only to GH, but to the cultural memory of daytime television itself. Internally, producers are grappling with impossible choices. While no official announcement has been made regarding the fate of Robert Scorpio, whispers have begun to circulate about the preparations for a permanent farewell. Some sources close to production indicate that the creative team has been considering how to bring Robert's story to a close with dignity, respect, and the gravity it deserves, should that moment come. Ideas range from a final WSB mission that ends in sacrifice, to a heartfelt goodbye letter read aloud by Holly, or a poignant flashback montage serving as Robert's swan song. Regardless of which path they choose, there is a sense among the cast and crew that this may be the last chapter written for a character who shaped so much of the GH universe. And what of Holly? For years, her narrative has been intimately bound to Robert's. Their love story was never neat or uncomplicated. It was marked by disappearances, betrayals, reconciliations, and a deep emotional undercurrent that neither time nor distance could sever. Holly without Robert feels like half a melody missing its harmony. If the character must carry on without him, she will have to navigate not just grief, but a reshaping of her identity. There is speculation that she may return to Port Charles, consumed by sorrow and revenge, and perhaps, find herself drawn into an unexpected alliance with Sasha and locked in a dangerous game against the manipulative Jen Sidwell. The writers have reportedly begun exploring whether Holly's emotional unraveling could be the foundation for a new arc, one that transforms her grief into strength or plunges her into darkness in Robert's absence. For now, Port Charles feels suspended in mourning. Every frame Robert ever graced now replays like a farewell note. The scenes with Holly shimmer with greater poignancy. The exchanges with Jason and Sasha, once perceived as nostalgic callbacks, now feel like Tristan's personal goodbyes. The fictional world of GH, though built on scripts and sets, suddenly feels heartbreakingly real. That is the power of a performance lived truthfully for decades. That is the legacy of an actor who never played a role, but rather embodied it. Whether or not Tristan Rogers awakens from his coma, whether Robert Scorpio gets a heroic send-off or simply fades into the shadows, one thing remains certain: his absence will never be silent. It will echo through the hallways of General Hospital, in every scene where Robert should have been, in every mission WSB embarks upon, and in the eyes of Holly whenever she stares too long at an empty space. His story may find its end, but his presence will remain stitched into the very fabric of the show. And for the millions who have watched him chase villains, rescue lovers, and protect his family, that presence will be enough to keep him alive in their hearts forever. Even if the name Tristan Rogers no longer appears in the end credits of each new episode of General Hospital, his legacy will endure like lifeblood flowing through the very soul of the show. It will live not only in memory but in the cadence of every storyline that dares to tread the same emotional terrain he once commanded. For fans who have followed the series for decades, his presence remains unshakable, etched into every corner of the soundstage, every echoing hallway of Port Charles, and every moment where truth, justice, and raw emotion intersected under his watchful gaze. Veterans of the soap opera community will never forget how he could enter a room like a sudden gust of wind, swift, unrelenting, and full of intent, stripping every lie bare without ever needing to raise his voice. They remember the way his silence could speak louder than fury, how a single look could send a chill down a villain's spine, and how his final embrace with Robin before she left for Africa remains one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in the show's history. These aren't just recollections, they are part of a living archive that pulses with the emotions of millions who grew up with Robert Scorpio as a protector, a mentor, a flawed hero who always found his way back to the light. His journey, told over years with depth and nuance, became an anchor for General Hospital, and it is this unmatched legacy that has made recent discussions among producers and fans especially charged with emotion. There is no easy answer to the question of whether Robert should continue in the hands of another actor, but for many, there is only one path that feels honest. To recast would be to dilute something sacred. To replace would be to pretend that the intangible essence of Robert was ever just a script or a costume. For those who hold Tristan's work close to their hearts, the only fitting tribute is to let the character depart with him, quietly, nobly, and immortalized forever in the collective memory of the fandom. General Hospital now finds itself not only at a creative crossroads, but facing a spiritual reckoning. How does a show recover from the loss of one of its most defining souls? How do writers and producers move forward while honoring a legacy that is deeply personal to so many? The answer, if it exists, will not come through ratings or headlines. It will come through the reverent silence that falls over the studio when someone mentions Tristan's name, through the tears that blur the eyes of longtime crew members who watched him bring Robert to life day after day, and through the decision to preserve his story as a monument rather than an unfinished sketch. Outside of the production, an even deeper mourning continues. Fans around the world have transformed their grief into acts of profound tenderness. Flowers are quietly placed at the entrance of the hospital where Tristan now lies, their petals speaking words that hearts cannot. Candlelight vigils illuminate sidewalks, driveways, and living rooms, casting shadows that dance like fragments of memory across the walls. Letters arrive in stacks. Handwritten notes from people who once leaned on Robert Scorpio during moments of personal heartbreak, who learned about strength, justice, and sacrifice through the lens of his performance. They write not only to Tristan, but to the spirit that moved through him, the one that lifted their lives in ways words can't fully explain. The prayers have not stopped. They are whispered in the early hours of morning, muttered beneath breaths before bed, shouted into the ether during moments of frustration and hope. Whether those prayers will be answered remains unknown, but the world continues to wait, tenderly, painfully, devotedly. In each moment that passes, the idea of a miracle does not fade, it lingers like the final note of a song, hanging in the air, refusing to be silenced. And if that miracle should arrive? If Tristan's eyes flutter open, if he breathes deeply again and the machines yield to the rhythm of life, then General Hospital will not simply celebrate his recovery. It will breathe again. The fictional Port Charles will be reborn, and so too will the hearts of every fan who kept the faith. There will be applause, yes, but more than that, there will be reverence. A moment where fiction and reality blur, and the curtain lifts not for another act, but for a man who earned every second of it. But even if that moment does not come, even if time delivers a different ending, Tristan Rogers will never truly be gone. He will live on in every scene that dares to carry the weight of justice, every character who finds courage in the face of impossible odds, and every viewer who remembers what it felt like to be seen, to be protected, to be moved. He is not just part of General Hospital's past. He is the reason it became what it is. And no matter how the story continues, there will always be a place at the heart of Port Charles that bears his name, not in ink, not in credits, but in love. As the storm of emotion surrounding Tristan Rogers' illness continues to ripple through the General Hospital universe, the reality that Robert Scorpio's story is nearing its end begins to settle like a heavy fog over Port Charles and beyond. Yet, in the heart of this tragedy, a sense of anticipation pulses just beneath the sorrow. That anticipation stems from the knowledge that somewhere within the vaults of the GH production offices, there exists a series of final episodes, scenes filmed in silence, tucked away with reverence, that may mark one of the most significant farewells in the show's history. These episodes, crafted during what may now be known as Tristan's final days on set, represent more than just the closure of a storyline. They represent a cultural reckoning, a goodbye not just to a character but to an era, a man, a legend. The writing team, fully aware of the emotional gravity surrounding this moment, is said to have poured their hearts into these scripts. They knew, perhaps even before fans did, that these scenes could become the most important minutes of General Hospital in decades. Every line was written with the weight of legacy. Every frame was envisioned not only as entertainment, but as tribute. And though the content remains closely guarded, a few whispers have emerged, hints of what might unfold when Robert Scorpio, the WSB agent who defined a generation of storytelling, finally exits the stage. One possibility gaining traction is a high-stakes final mission, one that calls Robert out of retirement, into danger, into one last dance with fate. The stakes would be global, but the motivation deeply personal. Perhaps a threat to Robin or her children, or a long-buried enemy resurfacing with vengeance in mind. Robert would respond not with fear, but with the steady, unflinching courage that has defined him for decades. He would leave behind no goodbyes, just a note, a look, a final silent promise. And in the end, the mission would be completed, but Robert would not return, not because he failed, but because he gave everything. His disappearance would not be a defeat, but a choice, a final act of love and duty. Another version reportedly discussed behind the scenes is far more intimate, quieter in execution but devastating in impact. In this iteration, Robert becomes aware of his own fading health. Perhaps he receives a diagnosis he chooses to keep private. He does not want pity. He does not want ceremony. What he wants is to protect the people he loves and to leave on his own terms. He records a message for Holly. One final conversation where he reflects on their decades together, the mistakes they made, the love they never lost. He might speak of Robin, of Daisy, of the new generations he's helped raise, of the peace he's finally found in the acceptance of his own mortality. The audience would watch this message unfold not just as a farewell from character to character, but as a heartfelt goodbye from Tristan to his fans. It would not need action, music, or tears to be powerful. The truth would be enough. And then there is the most poetic vision, the one that aligns not with drama, but with grace. Imagine Robert, having tied off the final loose threads of his past, walking away from Port Charles with no fanfare. The scene would be quiet. No gunfire. No speeches. Just Robert on a familiar street at dusk, the city lights beginning to flicker on around him. He pauses to look back, just once, and then walks forward, disappearing into the golden light of the setting sun. That image, subtle and wordless, would speak volumes. It would suggest that his journey continues somewhere out of view, that heroes never truly die, they simply move on when their story is complete. No matter which direction the writers choose, it is certain that these final moments will carry a weight unlike any other in GH history. And they must, because there is no void deeper than the one left by Tristan Rogers. His absence will not be felt in just the episodes to come, but in every episode after. His was not the kind of presence that could be replicated or recast. His was a singular voice, a specific rhythm of performance that became synonymous with truth, intelligence, and unwavering emotional honesty. Even at his character's most stoic, there was always a tremor of vulnerability in Tristan's eyes. That vulnerability, that authenticity, was what made Robert Scorpio not just believable, but unforgettable. Across the globe, fans are bracing themselves for this moment. The thought of watching Robert's final scenes is both unbearable and essential. It will be like holding your breath and willingly diving into grief, not because you want the pain, but because you know it's the price of love. You want to be there when it happens, to say goodbye, to cry, to honor the man who stood with you through the best and worst years of your life. For some, Robert Scorpio was the first hero they ever saw. For others, he was a constant in a world that kept changing. For all, he was real in the way that only someone who tells the truth on camera can ever truly be. Behind the scenes, producers and cast members are said to be preparing their own tributes. There are discussions of special retrospectives, commemorative interviews, and possibly even a behind-the-scenes featurette chronicling Tristan's final days on set. But they are treading carefully, waiting to see what the future holds for the man whose life still hangs in fragile balance. No one wants to say goodbye prematurely. But everyone is preparing, emotionally, creatively, spiritually, for the farewell that may be just around the corner. And so, we wait. For the episodes. For the decisions. For the moment when fiction and reality blend into one of the most meaningful send-offs in television history. The cameras may stop rolling. The credits may change. But there is no timeline where Robert Scorpio truly leaves us. Tristan Rogers gave too much. He carved too deep a path into the show, into the hearts of his fans. His spirit will echo in every future storyline, every scene where justice prevails, every moment where love triumphs over darkness. This will not be just another chapter ending. It will be the turning of a page in a book so treasured, so dog-eared and highlighted by time, that even after the final word is read, it will remain on the shelf, opened often, remembered always, and cherished forever. Robert Scorpio may walk away. But Tristan Rogers, the man behind the myth, will never be gone. In the ever-evolving tapestry of General Hospital, where lives intertwine, betrayals simmer, and miracles are just as likely as heartbreak, the looming farewell of Robert Scorpio marks a moment unlike any other in the show's storied history. With Tristan Rogers' sudden and tragic decline in health, the lines between fiction and reality have blurred in a way that fans, writers, and actors alike are still struggling to grasp. For more than 4 decades, Robert wasn't just a character. He was a force. A moral compass. A protector. A man forged in the crucible of international intrigue and personal loss, whose journey through Port Charles mirrored the very soul of the soap opera genre, dramatic yet deeply human, larger than life yet achingly relatable. Now, as Tristan lies in a coma, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines and the relentless prayers of those who love him, it is not just his family and colleagues who hold vigil. It is all of us. Millions of fans, scattered across continents and generations, united by a shared reverence for what he gave. From the way he looked at Holly during their most tender moments, to the unwavering confidence with which he confronted corruption and danger, Tristan's Robert was never just acting, it was embodiment. He showed us that true strength can be quiet. That justice sometimes speaks in whispers. That the heart, even when battered, still dares to hope. As viewers await the airing of his final episodes, those sacred final chapters filmed with the knowledge, perhaps unspoken but felt by all, that they could be his last, there is an emotional stillness gripping the GH community. It is the calm before an inevitable storm. And yet, within that stillness lies a powerful reverence. Writers are delicately crafting not just an ending, but a tribute. A farewell not built on spectacle, but on truth. Whether Robert's exit comes in the form of a heroic mission, a heartfelt message to Holly, or a solitary walk into the sunset, it will be carried by more than just narrative, it will be carried by love. Love for Tristan. Love for Robert. Love for what they meant to a show, a cast, and an audience who watched them grow old with grace and grit.